Most people imagine divine punishment as something reserved for the wicked, for the rebellious, for those who spit in the face of heaven. The truth is different. One of the most disturbing deaths recorded in the Hebrew Scriptures happened to a man who had just performed one of the most spectacular prophetic acts in Israel's history, and his only crime was believing another prophet. This is the story they never fully explained to you. Somewhere around 930 years before the Common Era, the unified kingdom that David had built and Solomon had expanded was tearing itself apart. Solomon had died after a reign of roughly 40 years, and his son, Rehoboam, had just made the most catastrophic political miscalculation in Israel's history. When the northern tribes came asking for lighter taxation, Solomon had conscripted 30,000 forced laborers for the temple alone. According to 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 13, Rehoboam listened to his young advisors instead of his father's seasoned counselors. His response was infamous. He told the assembly that his little finger was thicker than his father's waist. He promised not relief, but intensification. The result was immediate and irreversible. 10 of the 12 tribes broke away under a military commander named Jeroboam, son of Nebat. The kingdom split in two, Israel in the north, Judah in the south. And what came next would set the stage for one of the strangest divine judgments ever recorded. Jeroboam had a problem that had nothing to do with armies, borders, or economics. His problem was theological geography. The temple, the only legitimate center of worship for all 12 tribes, sat in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem belonged to Rehoboam. Every major feast, every required sacrifice, every pilgrimage obligation meant that his citizens had to walk south, cross the border into enemy territory, enter the capital of his rival, and worship in a building that reinforced Judah's spiritual authority. Jeroboam understood something that most modern readers miss. In the ancient Near East, religious loyalty and political loyalty were the same thing. If his people kept going to Jerusalem 3 times a year, their hearts would eventually follow. 1 Kings chapter 12 verse 27 records his exact fear, that the kingdom would return to the house of David if the people continued sacrificing at the temple. So he engineered a solution. 2 golden calves, one placed in Bethel, roughly 18 kilometers north of Jerusalem, right on the border, a deliberate interception point for northerners heading south to worship. The other placed in Dan, about 190 kilometers further north, at the extreme tip of his territory, ensuring that even the most remote tribes had no excuse to cross into Judah. He built shrines on high places. He appointed priests from outside the tribe of Levi, a direct violation of the Mosaic law established in Deuteronomy chapter 18. He even shifted the calendar. The Feast of Tabernacles, commanded for the 7th month in Leviticus chapter 23 verse 34, he moved to the 8th month. He created an entire alternative religious infrastructure from scratch, a parallel system designed not to honor God, but to consolidate power. And then, on the very day he stood at the altar in Bethel to burn incense, a function reserved for consecrated priests, a stranger walked in from the south. No name. The text of 1 Kings chapter 13 never identifies him by anything other than man of God. He came from Judah. He came with a specific, devastating message. And what he did in the next few minutes would demonstrate a level of prophetic authority that Bethel had never witnessed. He stood before the altar and spoke directly to the stone, not to the king. He declared that a descendant of David, named Josiah, would one day stand on that very spot and burn the bones of the false priests upon it. Consider the precision here. He named a king, Josiah, roughly 300 years before that king was born. This is recorded in 1 Kings chapter 13, verses 1 through 2, and its fulfillment is documented in 2 Kings chapter 23, verses 15 through 16, when Josiah did exactly what the unnamed prophet foretold. 3 centuries of accuracy. This was not a vague, oracular statement. It was a surgical prediction with a name, a place, and a specific desecration attached to it. Jeroboam reacted as any threatened monarch would. He stretched out his hand from beside the altar and ordered his guards to seize the man. The moment his arm extended, it froze. The Hebrew word used, yavesh, means it dried up, withered, became paralyzed in mid-air. The king of Israel stood before his own altar, before his own people, with his arm locked in a gesture of accusation he could not retract. Then the altar itself split apart. The ashes poured out onto the ground, exactly as the man of God had declared moments before, as the confirming sign, recorded in verse 3. In front of every priest, every official, every worshipper present, the entire religious apparatus that Jeroboam had constructed was being publicly dismantled by a power that no golden calf could match. Jeroboam's response reveals the complexity of the moment. He did not order a second arrest. He did not call for his army. He begged. 1 Kings chapter 13, verse 6, the king asked the man of God to pray for him, to entreat the face of the Lord so that his hand could be restored. And the man of God did exactly that. He prayed, and the king's hand was restored to normal. Here is where the narrative takes its first unexpected turn. Jeroboam, grateful and perhaps genuinely shaken, offered the prophet a reward. Come to the palace, eat with me, refresh yourself, and I will give you a gift. The offer was generous. In the ancient Near East, sharing a meal with a king was an act of covenant, of alliance, of political alignment. It was precisely the kind of entanglement that God had anticipated. The man of God refused. His exact words, preserved in verses 8 and 9, are critical to everything that follows. He said that even if Jeroboam gave him half his palace, he would not go in, would not eat bread, would not drink water in that place, because the Lord had commanded him by his word, do not eat bread, do not drink water, and do not return by the way you came. 3 prohibitions, absolute, non-negotiable, delivered directly from God to this one man for this one mission. The prohibition against eating and drinking was more than ascetic discipline. In the cultural framework of the ancient Near East, accepting food in a location meant accepting fellowship with that location's religious and social order. God was ensuring that his prophet's message could not be diluted, co-opted, or softened by any appearance of social acceptance. The prophet was to deliver judgment, demonstrate power, and vanish, leaving nothing behind but the shattered altar and the memory of a withered hand healed. He left Bethel by a different road. He was obeying. He was following every instruction. The mission, by any observable measure, was a total success. The altar was broken. The king was humbled. The message was delivered. The prophet was heading home, and then an old man intercepted him. Living in Bethel was another prophet. The text calls him simply an old prophet. His sons had witnessed everything at the altar: the confrontation, the withered hand, the splitting stone, and they rushed home to tell their father. The old prophet's reaction was immediate and deliberate. He ordered his sons to saddle his donkey, and he rode after the man of God. He found him sitting under a terebinth tree. The Hebrew word elah describes a large, spreading oak common to the Judean foothills, often reaching heights of 12 to 15 meters, providing dense shade in the exposed landscape. The man of God was resting there, perhaps 25 or 30 kilometers into his return journey. The midday heat in the Judean lowlands during this period could reach 38 to 40 degrees Celsius. He had walked since dawn without food or water. His body was depleted. The old prophet extended the same invitation Jeroboam had. Come back with me, eat bread at my house. The man of God gave the same refusal, the same 3 prohibitions, the same direct attribution to divine command. But the old prophet added something Jeroboam could not. He said, "I too am a prophet like you." And then he delivered the lie that would prove fatal. "An angel spoke to me by the word of the Lord, saying, 'Bring him back with you to your house, that he may eat bread and drink water.'" 1 Kings chapter 13, verse 18. And then the text adds 5 words that function like a scalpel. "But he lied to him." Those 5 words are among the most chilling in the entire Hebrew Bible. The narrator does not soften them, does not explain the old prophet's motive, does not offer psychological context, just the bare surgical fact: he lied. Now place yourself inside the mind of the man of God at that moment. He has a direct command from God, but standing before him is another prophet, someone who claims to operate under the same divine authority, delivering what appears to be an updated instruction through an angelic intermediary. In the prophetic tradition of ancient Israel, angels regularly served as divine messengers. Abraham received them, Jacob wrestled one, Moses encountered one in the burning bush, as recorded in Exodus chapter 3. The claim was not absurd on its face. It was plausible. It was exactly the kind of communication that God had used before. And the man of God made his choice. He went back. He sat at the old prophet's table. He ate the bread. He drank the water. The meal was still in progress when everything changed. The word of the Lord came, not to the man of God, but to the old prophet who had lied. This detail is staggering in its implications. The liar became the vessel for genuine prophecy in the same hour. 1 Kings chapter 13, verses 21 through 22 record the pronouncement. "Because you have defied the word of the Lord, and have not kept the commandment that the Lord your God commanded you, your body shall not come to the tomb of your fathers." The sentence was death without ancestral burial, one of the most severe judgments in the entire Israelite framework, where being gathered to one's fathers was considered essential to honor in death. The man of God finished the meal. The old prophet saddled a donkey for him. He mounted and rode out onto the road toward Judah. A lion met him on the way and killed him. But what the lion did next is what has confounded scholars, theologians, and historians for nearly 3,000 years. The lion killed the man and then stood beside the body. It did not eat the corpse. It did not attack the donkey. It did not wander away. The body lay on the road. The donkey stood beside it. The lion stood beside both. 3 figures frozen in a tableau that defied every known behavior pattern of Asiatic lions, which were common in the region until their extinction there around the 19th century of the Common Era. An adult Asiatic lion, weighing between 150 and 200 kilograms, with a bite force exceeding 450 kilograms per square centimeter, does not kill prey and then stand guard over it passively. It feeds. It drags the carcass to cover. It defends its kill from scavengers. This lion did none of those things. Travelers passed by. They saw the body on the road, the donkey standing, the lion standing. The scene was so unnatural, so clearly outside the boundaries of animal behavior that it became news. Word reached Bethel. The old prophet heard about it and immediately understood what had happened. He rode out, found the scene exactly as described, the body, the donkey, the lion, all still in position, and loaded the corpse onto his own donkey. He brought it back to Bethel. He laid it in his own tomb, and he wept over it, saying, "Alas, my brother." That phrase, "alas, my brother," carries a weight that the English translation barely captures. The Hebrew hoi achi is a formal lamentation, a funeral cry of genuine grief. This was not performance. The old prophet who had lied to this man, who had directly caused his death through deception, now grieved him as family, and then he gave instructions to his own sons that reveal something even more extraordinary. He told them that when he himself died, they should bury him in the same tomb. lay his bones beside the bones of the man of God, because the word that the man of God had cried against the altar in Bethel and against all the high places in the cities of Samaria would surely come to pass. The old prophet believed the prophecy completely. He had always believed it. He had lied anyway. This is the detail that makes the story resistant to simple moral categories. The old prophet was not an unbeliever. He was not a false prophet in the sense of serving other gods. He recognized the authentic word of the Lord. He validated it with his own burial plans. And yet he deceived a fellow prophet into violating a divine command. The text never explains why. Commentators across centuries have proposed jealousy, a desire to test the younger prophet, loneliness, the compulsion of a man living in Jeroboam's corrupted religious system, who craved fellowship with someone who still carried genuine authority. None of these explanations are confirmed by the text. The old prophet's motive remains one of the permanent silences of Scripture. But the silence around the man of God's decision is even louder. He had a direct, personal, unambiguous command from God. Do not eat. Do not drink. Do not return by the same road. He obeyed it when the king of Israel offered rewards. He recited it verbatim when first approached by the old prophet, and then he abandoned it because another human being, however credentialed, claimed to have received a contradictory update. This is the theological razor at the center of the story. God had spoken to him directly. No intermediary was needed to clarify, amend, or override that instruction. The man of God did not need an angel to confirm what God had already said in person. The very fact that the supposed angelic message contradicted the direct divine command should have been the proof of its falsity. A genuine update from God would not have arrived through a stranger in the territory he had been told to leave. It would not have reversed the specific conditions of his mission. It would not have required him to do the exact things God had prohibited. The man of God's failure was not moral weakness in the conventional sense. He did not chase pleasure. He did not seek reward. He was not ambitious or greedy. He was tired, dehydrated, sitting alone under a tree in hostile territory after the most intense spiritual confrontation of his life. And another prophet offered him rest, food, water, and the comfort of prophetic fellowship, all packaged in what sounded like divine authorization. His failure was epistemological. He trusted a secondary source over a primary revelation. He allowed someone else's claimed experience with God to overwrite his own confirmed experience with God. The lion that killed him was not a random predator. Its behavior, killing without consuming, standing without attacking the donkey, remaining visible to passers-by, marked it as an instrument of specific divine purpose. The judgment was not hidden, it was displayed. The entire arrangement was a sign, a second prophetic act layered on top of the first. The broken altar in Bethel demonstrated God's authority over false worship. The lion on the road demonstrated God's authority over his own servants. Both messages were public. Both were undeniable. Both cost something enormous. The death toll of prophetic ministry in ancient Israel was staggering by any standard. Tradition and text together suggest that Isaiah was sawn in two during Manasseh's reign, a detail referenced obliquely in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 37. Jeremiah was thrown into a cistern of mud, sinking into the mire until an Ethiopian official intervened, as recorded in Jeremiah chapter 38. Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, was stoned to death in the temple courtyard by order of the very king he had helped enthrone, documented in 2 Chronicles chapter 24, verses 20 through 21. Elijah, after single-handedly confronting 450 prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, collapsed under a broom tree and begged God to take his life, recorded in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 4. The psychological toll of carrying divine messages to hostile audiences was enormous. Isolation, fear, physical deprivation, and the constant awareness that the message you carried could cost you everything. This was the standard operating environment of a Hebrew prophet. But the man of God from Judah is unique in this catalogue of suffering. He was not killed by a pagan king. He was not executed by idolaters. He was not martyred for his faith. He was killed for a moment of misplaced trust in a fellow believer. The danger did not come from outside the prophetic community. It came from within. Consider the terrain he crossed that final day. The road from Bethel southward toward Judah descends through the central hill country, limestone ridges cut by seasonal wadis, with elevation changes from roughly 860 meters at Bethel down to valleys below 600 meters, before climbing again toward the Judean plateau. The vegetation in that era included scrubland, scattered terebinth groves, and enough ground cover to support populations of deer, wild boar, and the predators that hunted them. Asiatic lions, Panthera leo-persica, were documented throughout the Levant from the Bronze Age well into the Iron Age. Assyrian royal inscriptions from the 9th and 8th centuries before the Common Era describe lion hunts as a marker of royal power. Tiglath-Pileser I claimed to have killed 120 lions on foot and over 800 from his chariot. These were not rare animals. They were a constant, lethal presence in the landscape. A man walking alone on an isolated road through that terrain was vulnerable to predation under normal circumstances. But these were not normal circumstances. The lion's behavior after the kill was the proof. A natural predation would have left scattered remains, drag marks, and a fed predator resting in cover. Instead, the scene was preserved like a diorama. Body, donkey, lion, all stationary, all visible, all waiting to be witnessed. The judgment was not just punishment, it was communication. God was speaking through the arrangement itself, through the violation of natural law, through the impossible stillness of a predator standing beside unconsumed prey. The old prophet understood this instantly. When he heard the report from travelers, he did not speculate about rogue lion behavior. He did not wonder if perhaps the lion was sick or aged. He said, "It is the man of God who disobeyed the word of the Lord." He recognized the divine signature in the anomaly, and his subsequent actions, the burial, the mourning, the instruction about his own bones, suggest a man who understood that he himself bore enormous responsibility for what had happened, even if the text does not record divine punishment falling on him during his lifetime. The fulfillment of the prophecy came approximately 310 years later. 2 Kings, chapter 23, describes how King Josiah of Judah, the very name spoken at the altar in Bethel, conducted a sweeping religious reform. He destroyed the high places. He burned the bones of idolatrous priests on the altar at Bethel, defiling it permanently. And when his workers noticed a particular tomb marker, they asked whose grave it was. The people of the city told them. It was the man of God who came from Judah and proclaimed these things against the altar of Bethel. Josiah ordered that his bones be left undisturbed, and because the old prophet's bones lay in the same tomb, they too were preserved. The liar's burial plan worked. His association with the man of God protected even his remains from desecration across 3 centuries. The irony is surgical. The old prophet's deception killed the man of God. The old prophet's strategic burial beside the man of God saved his own bones from the very judgment the man of God had prophesied. The deceiver was preserved by proximity to his victim, and the victim's prophecy was so precisely fulfilled that even the detail of his tomb became part of the historical record. What remains after the dust, the lion, and the 300 years of silence is not a simple moral lesson about obedience. It is something far more uncomfortable. The story reveals that sincerity is not a shield. The man of God was sincere when he believed the old prophet. He was not rebelling. He was not scheming. He was exhausted, isolated, and confronted with information that seemed credible from a source that seemed legitimate, and he still died. The narrative forces a confrontation with a principle that cuts against every human instinct toward comfort and consensus. When God speaks directly, no secondary testimony, however authoritative, however angelic, however prophetic, has the standing to contradict it. The man of God had enough revelation to complete his mission and survive. He did not lack information. He lacked the resolve to treat his own confirmed experience with God as final and non-negotiable. And in the economy of divine justice, as presented in 1 Kings chapter 13, that single failure, not of character, not of courage, but of epistemological nerve, carried a lethal cost. The old prophet wept, the donkey stood still, the lion held its ground, and somewhere on a limestone road between Bethel and Judah, the body of a man who had shattered an altar and healed a king lay uncovered under the sun because he ate a meal he was told not to eat, offered by a man he should never have trusted. 310 years later, a king whose name he had spoken before anyone had conceived him stood on the exact ground he had prophesied about and did the exact thing he had described. Every word proved true. The altar was defiled, the bones were burned, the high places were demolished. The man of God was right about everything except who to believe.